I appreciate everyone's patience, and I thank you for the opportunity to come and speak on a very important matter. I'm a cybersecurity expert. I've been performing incident response and forensics examination as an expert witness since 2007. I've been conducting forensics since the late 80s. So I've got a few years under my belt on this. I would like to start out just with making one comment. I know that the question at hand here is about the QR codes, but when you're looking at the voting systems utilized in Georgia, that problem extends to the entire system, not just the QR code component. I had the opportunity as part of a legal activity to examine the voting systems from Coffee County, Georgia that were used in the 2020 election. Okay. Those findings, I released a report. I provided that for dissemination to the board. Hopefully you have a chance to read that. It goes in great detail the significant cybersecurity failures and the vulnerabilities of the Dominion voting system as is currently configured within the state of Georgia. I also testified in an injunction hearing by the DeKalb Republican Party versus Secretary of State Rathesberger that was held in September 30th and October 1st of 2024, and provided detailed testimony consistent with that report that I have disseminated. I think the most surprising fact here is that when you think about our voting systems and you think about the security protections that HAVA put in place to certify those systems, and the fact that your legislature had actually enacted a requirement through legislation to purchase a EAC certified system, that you would think that the voting systems in Georgia currently are secure. One, are secure. Two, they still meet those certification standards by the EAC. And three, that they are not vulnerable to hacking. I will tell you in all three cases that is not the case. So let's talk about the cybersecurity posture for a minute. And I'm going to make a statement here that if you own a home computer, then that computer is better protected from a cybersecurity perspective than the voting systems are within the state of Georgia. Now, why is that? Well, one, the home computers have updated antivirus. They get updated every Thursday, okay? Those home computers have system patches, okay? Those home computers typically will have a unique username and a unique password for every user that accesses that computer. I will tell you that your voting systems as configured do not meet those three requirements. They have an antivirus, but that antivirus has never been updated since the date that it was installed and certified by the state. In the case of Coffee County, that was almost 2 years before we looked at that system. The system had never been patched. So all the vulnerabilities that existed within the Microsoft operating system and other programs from September of 2019 until December of 2021 had not been addressed. They were extremely vulnerable. There are over 1 million vulnerabilities that would provide access to those systems that there was no protection provided for. Okay. Two, let me talk a little bit about the purposes of certification. So the purpose of certification under the HAVA Act and by the state is to ensure that those systems are secure, that they are not vulnerable to unauthorized access, and that their baseline can be in a static position so that you know the programs that are on there are not going to harm the system, nor are they going to provide unauthorized users access to that system. Okay. I find an argument by the state very interesting. So if you ask someone why they did not update the antivirus on those systems, they will typically tell you, well, if we update or change anything on those systems, it invalidates the certification from the EAC. And that is true, okay? Theoretically, it would invalidate that certification. But the problem comes in the fact that those systems actually contain multiple copies of compilers. Now, compilers actually change human readable code into machine executable code. And it is shocking to me that in my examination of the Coffee County voting system, the EMS and the ICC, that the EMS alone had over 3,098 executable files that were either created or modified after the date of certification and the installation of the certified version by the Secretary of State onto those systems. Now, that would mean that the system is not certifiable, that it should be uncertified at this point for activities involving voting elections. The response by the state during the hearing in October of 24 was quite frankly shocking and alarming. None of the presentation on the cyber vulnerabilities that we presented was ever refuted. Their argument was, yes, I know we have a legal requirement to purchase a certified system, but there is no legal requirement for us to maintain the certified state of that system. I have also distributed the appellate reply by the Secretary of State's attorneys in that very matter. And if you look on pages 11, 12, and 16, you will see that argument, and that argument is signed by the attorneys representing the Secretary of State. That is shocking to me, especially given the fact that following the 2020 election, there were very public statements made by the Secretary of State's office that the systems were secure, that there was nothing changed on those systems, and that it was preposterous to think that any manipulation or anything could have occurred on those systems. Well, the system that I examined in Coffee County certainly did not meet that description that was publicly broadcast to the Georgia public. We've often been asked, well, have you proven that there was any manipulation that occurred on those systems? And the answer is we cannot definitively prove that because, one way or the other, either yes or no, because the security mechanisms that control the logging and the monitoring of those systems simply don't record enough of the right data and don't record all of the right data. So, for example, the Windows security logs on that system are only configured to retain 20 megabytes of data. That is enough coverage to hold approximately 5 days worth of logging. And as you know, with early voting, et cetera, you're talking about 35, 40 days that should be retained as part of those logs. The system that I examined, the security logs did not actually cover the election voting system time frame. The other piece that they don't monitor or log at all is what programs are executed on that system. Okay? Is it only the EAC approved executable files? You don't know because they don't log it and they don't alert on those things. What happened on the networks? Well, they don't log any network activity. So you don't know if a rogue device was joined to the network. to get unauthorized access to that system or not. Period. It just simply does not exist. Okay. I have also, as part of that Coffee County cybersecurity report, I outlined the DHS best practices for securing election systems. And I've detailed that in depth, and for the purpose of brevity here, I will tell you that none of those recommendations are fully implemented on the Dominion voting systems. I'll give you an example. One of those categories is the voting system username and password. It is true that those systems do have a voting username and password. However, they have the same usernames on every system, and in every jurisdiction that I have examined, all of the usernames are the same for each user account. And those usernames and those user passwords have never been changed since the day that system was installed. So in the case of Coffee County, those usernames and passwords had not been modified or changed for almost 2 years. Now think about the number of election volunteers that go through in the course of 2 years of local, municipal, state elections. You have a totally insecure system with the knowledge of those passwords running wild, essentially. Now, just to make myself clear, usernames are used to control your accesses within a system. There are admin accounts and there are user accounts. Anybody who is only designated as a user can use that same password to gain admin privileges. Okay. I am running tight on time. I appreciate your patience with this. I'm going to put one simple analogy here in an observation. These vulnerabilities have been known in these voting systems since March of 2021. The legislatures have failed to act to respond and address those well-known vulnerabilities at this point. And here we are shortly before another election cycle. And what we hear as an argument is, well, it's too close to an election. We can't modify our procedures. We can't adapt to secure our elections. And I say, what were you doing for the last 5 years? As parents, if you give your teenager a car and you know that the tires are going to blow out, you know the brakes are bad, you know the motor is about to go out and it's smoking out the tailpipe like, my Uncle Clyde's cigars, you're not going to let them drive that car to a dance. You're not going to let them take that out. Why would we do less with our election systems? There's never going to be a good time to address this problem, but it's even worse if we let this go on and on and on and on without addressing the problem. These are the foundation of our democracy, and I encourage you to debate and come up with the best possible plan to ensure that our voting systems and our voter integrity is secure. Thank you, and I'd be willing to address questions.